All right, what's going on, everybody? This is Peter Renna back with another edition of Dollar Bin Digging. Now, this week it's going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to go back and do a little bit more WandaVision, just based on last week's episode alone. Now, I realize at this point you guys are probably already have stayed up until 3 in the morning last night to watch the episode 8, or you've been got up early this morning to watch it, so you're probably already ahead of the game as far as WandaVision spec goes. But the books I picked this week are just kind of things that I just kind of sparked in my mind after watching last week's episode. So I realize it's a little bit behind, but I still think these are things you should still keep an eye out for because they can be found in those cheap boxes still if you look hard enough. So with that said, please like and subscribe to my channel as well as Tales from the Flip Side. And please read the article over on comicbookinvest.com where I'm putting down all the prices and giving you recent sales so you can see exactly why I picked these and why, you can do well if you look for these books. So with that said, please just hang in there for a second and we're going to get right into the books. All right, as I noted before before the break, these are books that are specifically related to episode 7 of WandaVision. So if you haven't seen that episode, please, now's your warning. Don't go on any further because I'm going to spoil stuff because that's what these picks are based off of. So that's your warning. I'm not giving you any more time. So with that said, my first book is kind of related to the little commercial that they throw in.
Ask your doctor about Nexus, a unique antidepressant that works to anchor you back to your reality, or the reality of your choice.
To the episodes, and in this commercial, they kind of tease a pill basically, but it was Nexus. The name of the pill was Nexus, and this is just in reference to Wanda being a Nexus being, basically. Now, credit to Topher who covered this in True First just a couple of weeks ago, and he recommended this book. And this book can still be found on the cheap, whether it's in the cheap bins, the cheap back issue bins at your shop. You can even find cheap ones online. Because again, if you check out the article on comicbookinvest.com, you will be able to see that there are still some sales that even online were still relatively very, very cheap compared to where the prices are now. Because I will say this right now, for all the books on this list, all these could be considered hot books based on the prices that have skyrocketed over the last 7 days or so. So there's your warning for that. But getting back to that Nexus Being bit that I was talking about, Avengers West Coast number 61 is the issue where it's revealed that Wanda is basically one of these Nexus beings. And that's basically one of these beings that she's pretty much the same. She's a keystone throughout all the multiverse. And with everything coming up and planned in the Marvel Universe with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and the Time Variance Authority that we know is going to be in Loki, all of these things kind of tie into this idea of her being a Nexus being. So it makes a lot of sense. So this issue here is worth it because it kind of, again, outlines that a little bit for us and introduces that idea that she is one of these important Nexus beings in the Marvel Universe and all universes, basically. So you can see here, they kind of, again, break down what I just said. Scarlet Witch is the Nexus being, one who belongs equally to all possible timelines, all realities, and divergences. So again, they're just kind of teasing this idea and moving us forward into a much, much larger multiverse. So again, this is the book you just want to keep an eye out for because you still might be able to find a lot of West Coast Avengers or Avengers West Coast books on the cheap, because that is a series that has been long forgotten and it just fills a lot of back issue bins. So keep an eye out for that there. Now, next up, the next few picks are really going to be Monica Rambeau focused because the other big event that really happens in this episode is we see that she basically gets powers.
All you do is lie!
As all long expected and long speculated on, it looks like she's going to get powers for hopefully the foreseeable future. So that's where all these next few picks are kind of focused in on. So with the next book, I'm looking at the Captain Marvel Giant Size Special from 1989. This book has gotten ridiculously priced over the last week or so. Now, that being said, this isn't a first appearance. This isn't even a first new name or anything like that. This is just basically her first solo book of her own. And while that be that important, she really only had this issue, and then they didn't do a second issue until 5 years later. It's like 1994. So she's really been kind of a tertiary side character, really, for the most part. She's not really carried her own title, so I wouldn't expect too much out of her as a character, but I think she is a good supporting character and a good part of a team, whether it be on the Mighty Avengers or the Ultimates and what have you throughout the, all the comic books. Next Wave was another great team that she was on. But that being said, this solo issue is not that easy to find, but it still could be in those cheap bins because this is, again, 1989. A lot of this stuff, it just kind of buries in those back issue bins. So keep an eye out for it because this book is rather expensive. As I said, this one came out in November of 1989, and then she didn't get a follow-up until, what was it, February of 94. So like I said, it's nearly 5 years before she got a second issue to her series. And even that's not really a second issue, but just another special. But she hasn't carried a title all on her own. And she's had more names than she's had titles, basically. So with that said, keep an eye out for that book. Now, our next little book I think we should look at here is this Avengers 227, which I know you guys have gotten the alerts. You've known to look out for this book a while now, and it already went up, but it kind of came back down. This one has been kind of on an up and down roller coaster kind of ride on prices. So this is the kind of one of those books that, while yes, a lot of cheap bins and dollar bins may have been picked clean of them, stores restock. Stores bring in new collections all the time, and books that might have been hot a year or 2 years ago may not be the case anymore. So these things get overlooked and don't get pulled, when new stock comes in. So this is the kind of book that you want to keep an eye out for because it could be back in those bins again, because again, this is her basically first joining the Avengers in this issue. Like, she just goes from being introduced in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, as you know. That's in the book you're not going to find in those dollar bins any longer. But this is an issue where she joins, basically the Avengers. Now, it's possible she joins the Avengers in the MCU. I don't know. I think there's more likelihood that they might create another team, maybe like the Ultimates, where she joins up with, the Blue Marvel, Captain Marvel, perhaps, whoever they pick to carry on the Black Panther legacy. I don't know. Like, that seems like a more likely avenue for her than just joining the regular Avengers, squad that they decide to go with. But hey, who knows? But this issue still has a lot of interest these days. It's her first joining the Avengers, so keep an eye out for it. Because it's just a book that can make you a couple of bucks if you find it and you don't want to keep it. But I think it's good just to have in the collection, just as a bit of the backstory for her as a character. So moving on, we got one more. And for our last pick, this is going to be a name change pick. Now, as I noted earlier, she's had a lot of names. A lot of people were expecting her to go by her mom's call sign, Photon, but I feel like her mom already kind of has that name, so I don't think she's going to take that for her name if she does get a superhero name in the MCU going forward. It doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like something that she would do. I mean, she's not going to be Captain Marvel because we already have one of those, and like I said, I don't think she's going to be Photon, so that kind of limits our options to maybe she goes and is, I think Pulsar was one of her names, but I'm kind of leaning towards Spectrum, and that's, I think, her most current name that she has in the Marvel universe. And it makes a lot of sense when you look at the power set that she has and how when she crossed through that barrier, Spectrum with light. I think that makes a lot of sense. So her first as Spectrum happened in Mighty Avengers 1. As you can see here, they even get her a huge panel with a whole explanation. Hey, look, she's got a new name, again. So this is a book. There are a lot of covers for this. Now, the regular cover is Luke Cage, and she's right there behind him with the rest of the team. That one's actually doing pretty well. I think it's kind of nearing $20 now. So if you can find this, and I know I've seen this tons and tons in the dollar bins because it's Mighty Avengers. Those oddball Avengers titles didn't really have a lot of interest, so they kind of filled up the dollar bins, at least the ones that I looked at. So you got the regular cover. That's the one that seems to be doing pretty well right now. There's also a blank, and then you got a Scotty Young baby cover, basically. It's kind of fun. And then you go into, there was a Deadpool, like a little Deadpool, cover where he's kind of worked himself in there. And then with that, there was also a one per store, I think, where it was a black and white version of that Deadpool cover, as well as another one per store that was a color fade of that original A cover as well. So, those things are getting kind of expensive if you look at some of the prices on eBay these days. So I'm not saying you're going to find those in dollar bins. It's just, I just want to give this information out so you guys know there's a lot of covers on this, just to keep your eyes out for it, because you never know. Just like the 1 in 50, which is a Brian Hitch cover. And then there's even a couple of, now even before we get to the stores, there's a 1 in 25, which is the Lego. And I think there's a 1 in 100, which is a black and white of the Lego. And then we can get to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund cover, which is basically just, Cage kind of focused. And then there's another Deadpool, but it's a Hastings cover this time. Again, like I said, there's a lot of covers for this issue, but just basically look out for that A cover, because that's the one you're most likely going to find. And like I said, it's been doing pretty well lately. So that's her first as Spectrum. So will it mean anything going forward? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But for right now, all of these books are selling very well. So just dig through the boxes, look for them, because if you are looking to make a few bucks and want to flip them, these are the types of things that you can hopefully find and move pretty quickly. But I also think they're good books if you find for cheap, just to keep in the collection, because I wouldn't say they're all keys, but they're just interesting little tidbits that you want to have in a collection. So with that being said, if you're watching this on my channel, hang in there. I got a couple of more honorable mention picks, but otherwise, please like and subscribe to my channel, as well as Tales. Bookmark comicbookinvest.com, because there's daily content updating every day on there. Tons of good stuff to read and great lists and articles. So please do yourself a favor. Make sure you're checking that website out, because I do. I know I write for it, but I still check it every day. I only do one article, but I'm still reading it every day. So with that being said, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next week. All right, thanks to you who checked this out on my channel and are hanging in there for the honorable mentions pick. And I got 2 of them for you this week. So just hang in there. Let's see what we got. Just a couple of more books that I think you can find for cheap that kind of tie in with some of the other books that I had in the original list. Basically the same themes and ideas. So first up, we're going to go with another Wanda book. And this is kind of, again, following up on that Nexus Being idea for her. And this is Scarlet Witch number 4. This is the last issue in a 4-issue miniseries that she had. And in this issue, she basically takes on almost like an evil version of herself that's going by the name of Lore, that is, or I don't want to say an evil version of herself, but she's also like a Nexus Being. It's kind of confusing. I will fully admit this. It was the 90s. There's a lot of crazy stories going on, but she faces off against this character, Lore, who's a Nexus Being who has destroyed many of the other multiverse universes herself. And again, I think this is partly an evil Wanda, because by the end, Wanda has basically absorbed this being into herself after destroying her. So there's just kind of a tease of like a dark Wanda on the way. As you can see here, so she's feeling better than ever before. And that's the end of the old Scarlet Witch. So kind of hinting at the idea that we're getting a new one going forward. Now, again, maybe this is something they do in the movies in the MCU, but I feel like they're already kind of touching on this idea of a evil Wanda with the show right now, as she seems to be under villain's control, whether that be Agatha Harkness or a bigger bad, which I think is really the case. I think it's not done. I don't think it's all Agatha at this point, despite the nice little monster musical that we had in last week's episode.
Who's been messing up everything?
It's been Agatha all along.
I still think there's more to this story than they've given us. So with that said, Scarlet Witch number 4, you could find this probably entire mini pretty cheap. Again, I'm not saying I'm going to do anything with it, but it's a weird read, so just grab them if you can and check them out. And then one more I got for you is another Monica Rambeau book. And this one is going back to that name thing. Because like I said, she's had a lot of names. So just in case it's not Spectrum, I think it's going to be Spectrum. You might want to check out the New Thunderbolts. There's this number 9, because in this is when she goes off of this name of Captain Marvel, and she takes the name. Well, actually, she loses Captain Marvel, and she even loses Photon again to the same guy, to Genis Vell, I think his name is. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I get the Kree names kind of messed up because they're all kind of the same. But Yeah, basically, he took her name of Captain Marvel when he came back, and then she went to Photon, and then now he's taking the name Photon, so she's got to move off a name again. They even make a joke about it. A little odd joke, and then throwing Pole Dancer in here. But basically, this is where she decides to go by the moniker of Pulsar. So, again, that's maybe something she goes by. I'm still leaning towards Spectrum, but this is where she kind of picks the name Pulsar. So, another little odd name spec. I know it's not the best spec in the world, but hey, it's kind of fun. And again, I'm talking about looking for $1. I'm not saying go out there and buy it for $20 or something. $1 is a lot different than 20. So if you find it for cheap, just grab it just for fun. And if it gets really hot, hey, move it. Get something else. Let somebody else have it, and you go buy yourself something nice with those profits. But that being said, I'm not saying you're gonna get a lot for this. This is again just a complete guess. Maybe she goes by Pulsar, and if she does, this is the book that she picked her name. I'm still leaning towards Spectrum. But with that said, those are just a couple of honorable mentions, oddball things to keep an eye out for. So, until next time, see you guys later.